In today's video, we're gonna be cutting out these 4 holiday trays and give Santa a run for his money. These trays are not only simple, but they're easy to make, festive, and they're gonna be great sellers. Let's get right into it. The material we're gonna use to cut out all 4 trays is gonna be one 2-foot by 2-foot piece of Bamex. This material is food safe, stable, and looks amazing. So let's get it screwed down to the table and start cutting. So the first cut we're gonna be doing is a pocket. And this pocket is to remove all the material so we can follow it up with that bowl and tray bit. And I'm gonna be using this Golden Girl. It's a serrated rougher, a 1/4-inch serrated rougher. And this is a downcut version where I have the Golden Boy, which is an upcut. This is the downcut version. I don't use it very often, so I wanted to test it in here so y'all can kind of see the results between that upcut and the downcut rougher.
A couple things to note on this tool path is I'm going 0.47 inches deep in 2 passes. I can probably cut it down to 1 pass, but I'm just going a little conservative right now. The next thing to notice is that I'm going in with a 1/4-inch pocket allowance, and that's going to allow that bit to come 1/4 inch off the walls so I can do the next tool path that I'm about to explain. The last thing to note is I'm doing a vertical raster on this because I want it to go with the grain, and whenever it goes with the grain, it just cuts a lot better in my opinion, and that's the way I roll.
So the Golden Girl just got done doing that roughing pocket. Immediately after it was done, I felt it was not hot, which is a good sign. If you cannot touch your bit and almost burns your finger, that means you're probably running too slow or there's a lot of vibrations in there. The second thing to note is that it did not produce any tear out or chip out on this top edge because it is a downcut bit. So that is a really good sign there. And the third thing you may be wondering is like, well, to do this roughing pass, do I have to have a serrated rougher like this? No, absolutely not. You do not have to have a serrated rougher like this, but I will say it's a lot quieter and it lasts a lot longer than if you just use like a standard downcut or upcut finisher. So there's a couple things to note. The last thing is whenever you do pockets, I know y'all guys sometimes get all these tiny squiggly lines in there and they're really hard to sand out. And so the point of doing this roughing pass is let all those tiny lines develop here, then we're gonna come back with that bowl and tray bit and just finish everything out, and you're not gonna have any of those chatter marks or those tiny lines that take forever sanding. So that's another reason I love this roughing pass. Now, the next pass we're gonna run is a little rim pass. And what this rim pass is gonna do, it's going to not allow that bowl bit to take off so much material. So it looks like a little step, but that step kind of matches the radius of that bowl bit, and so instead of having a sharp corner, you're gonna have this little step in that bowl bit. Because the radius of the bowl bit is equal to that step over, it's going to allow that bowl bit to not have to take off really any material and really gonna extend the life of that bowl bit. So watch this little step pass, it's really cool. I'm using that same Golden Girl, and then we'll move on to the next step.
How I'm running this tool path is I'm selecting the same exact vectors that I use for the pocketing tool path, except I'm doing a profile inside the line, and these are all my settings, and I'm going 0.24 inches deep to make that step.
That's it. So now that we got the pocket all roughed out, now it's time to put this bowl and tray bit in there. And to kind of emphasize the importance of that little stair step, once again, you don't have to have this, but I like saving the life of these bits. So this is a 3/4 bowl and tray bit with a 1/4-inch radius. And so I went down, and so now whenever this bowl bit comes over here, it only has to cut off this material and a little bit off the edge. And so that's gonna save the life of this bit. It's gonna be a lot quieter, and it's really gonna cut well. And I'm also gonna be cutting with the grain to keep sanding at a minimum because it's just gonna produce such a nice finish with only a 10% step over. So let's get this thing cranked up. And one other thing important to note is since we roughed out all this material, now I can run this thing at 300 inches a minute, no problem, 1 pass, and it's going to go so much faster than having to do it multiple passes and a lot slower if it's taking out all that meat. So let's get this bit running and get to cutting. All right, so I want you to notice like when it hits that, if that stair step wasn't there, it would really be struggling on this edge. So I do encourage you to put that little stair step because that's all you hear. But if you didn't have that stair step, it would be like, meow, and it's really loud. And for getting value from this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave any comments in the comment section below.
So as you can see, I'm going down a little bit farther than that roughing tool path, going vertically with the grain, and when everything cuts it out, it takes off that stair step and makes a nice, clean bottom.
So the bowl bit just finished up. Everything looks great. Next thing we're gonna do is put this upcut golden boy in there, and we're gonna come back and do a profile and actually profile out all of these trays. And I'm gonna leave an onion skin there. And the reason I'm leaving that onion skin is it allows me to do other things. And so after I do this, I'm coming back with a point cutting bit to kind of round over the edges. And then I'll come back and finish everything out. The finisher will then remove those serrated edges from the rougher and then cut off that onion skin, and everything's gonna be nice and neat. The finisher has a long life. The upcut bit did its job, took all that workload from that downcut finisher, and we're gonna have really, really good products. So let's go. Got the golden boy in. Let's do some roughing.
To create a proper onion skin on this 0.75 inch thick material, I'm only going down 0.68 inches, and because this is a roughing toolpath, I have an offset allowance of 0.02 inches. That way when the finisher comes back by, it takes off those serrated edges.
So before we run this point cutter, I did want to mention, I talked about that onion skin or eggshell earlier, and so you can kind of see it right here. This one's a little over 1/16 of an inch thick, and the reason I do that is this whole material's stable, but most of the profiling's already been done. And so now you can come in and do V-carves, you can put roundovers on it, you can do chamfers, and it's not gonna move. And then when you put that finisher in there, it only has to take off that little bit and then go in and take off those little bitty tiny roughing marks from that serrated rougher. And so I'm gonna put this point cutter in here to come and clean up these edges, and I don't have to worry about this point cutter cutting on both sides right over here like it would if I didn't use that roughing pass first with that thick onion skin. So like that is so important. Now, like hobbyist machines may not be that big of a deal, but it does save a lot of time and gives you a lot of flexibility in your CNC machining. So if you like what you're seeing from this video, I did just launch a free community called CNC Startups, where you can go in there and learn different CNC techniques, different CNC fundamentals. So if you have a CNC and you want to learn more, or you're looking at getting one, CNC Startups, it's free. It's going to be amazing for you. Hope you enjoy it. Link is in the description. Now, back to the video.
To create the vectors for this point cutting toolpath, I take everything and I offset it outwards 0.03 inches. And what this does is allow that bit to run along this line, and it doesn't dig into the corner of any of these toolpaths. Now, if you get the digital file, you do not have to worry about this, as I have a simple version and the version I used in the video, along with tons of explanations of each toolpath that I did, what I ran, and each vector that I selected for that toolpath. So if you do get the digital file, all of that is going to be included.
So the point cutter did its job. Next, we're just gonna put a 2-flute downcut finisher in there to finish everything out. But one thing to note is if you do not set a point cutter right, just like any roundover bits, it's gonna leave this little bit of an edge. This is nothing to really sand off, but it is something to note that if you are going to use a 1/4 inch point cutter or something like that, be sure you set it right. But if you don't, you will get these tiny little lines, but they're super easy to sand off if you are kind of a near miss. If you miss by a lot, it's a real pain in the butt to sand off, but these ain't nothing. Now, let's get that downcut finisher in. we got a stocking Christmas tree with a giant star. Snowman, no mouth, but a big nose. And a stylish hat, so you can't see my balding. So I'm gonna get all these sanded down, oiled up, and then we'll talk some business and little tips that I wish I did better along the way. All right, so overall, these things came out looking really good. They darkened up really nice. I sanded them down and just put some mineral oil on them. And all in all, like, I used multiple different tool paths just to kind of show y'all different ways of doing things. But you can honestly just use a 1/4 inch down cut finisher and do all the pocketing and do all of the cutting out yourself. You don't have to do all those different steps that I did, but I'm trying to just educate you, allow you to learn from my mistakes or my trial and errors so you don't have to do this in your own CNC journey. So I hope all of that helped. I did go ahead and cut out a couple of these off camera out of some maple. And so here's how a maple version looks of the hat and of the snowman. And so this is out of a maple panel, and this is out of that Bamex. Same thing with the snowman. They look pretty cool. Now, a couple tips on these and why I designed these this way is I think that you can engrave names right here, and I think this would be a really good selling point for these stockings if you wanted to go that route with the personalization. But all of these, I believe, are touch and feel products, so if you're looking at selling them, you're gonna have to do Facebook Marketplace or like a craft show or farmers markets. I don't think there's any bad options with all of these. So guys, if you're trying to sell them, craft shows, market days, they're touch and feel products, $25, $30 a piece. If you can get more, great. I'm not in those markets, so that's what I'm gonna try to fetch for them. I hope you learned a lot from all the different milling techniques. And as always, guys, remember, if you ain't cutting it close, you ain't cutting it right.